We are fortunate to have with us today a courageous scholar who asks these important questions in a clear, logical, and dispassionate tone. Please join me in welcoming David Ray Griffin.
Thank you. I was just going to ask if you want to stand up for 15 seconds and have your opportunity. Well, I'm pleased to be able to say, Paul, I've actually finished the book now, so it should be out in about 6 weeks, I hope. With regard to our topic today, truth in politics, some people may wonder, people maybe outside this room, but is there anything in the 9/11 Commission report that is untrue? And now that I've finished the book, my big question is, can I find a true sentence in the book? That may sound extreme, but if you don't take it too literally, and if you realize a sentence is a part of a paragraph, which is a part of the argument, then it is hard to find any truth there. And so what I'm going to do this afternoon is just go through and give you some examples. But to get an idea of my audience, how many people here have read some of the 9/11 Commission report? About half of you. Very good. And now also let me ask, and no grading on this, no going to purgatory, but how many have read some of my book, at least? Oh, wow. Great, okay. Yeah. The group gets an A. One thing to understand about the report is that, we quite often name commissions after the leader. So we had the Rumsfeld Commission on the space program, so on. So quite often this is called the Kean Commission. But it should be called the Kean-Zelikow Commission, because the executive director is Philip Zelikow. He was a member of the Bush 1 administration. He got to know Condoleezza Rice very well there. They both served on the National Security Council. When they were between administrations during the Clinton years, they wrote a book together. When the Bush 2 administration was coming into power, she brought him on to help with the transition. And then he was appointed to the Foreign Advisory Board so he is essentially a member of the Bush White House. And yet, as executive director, he ran the commission. He had a staff of 70-some. He assigned them which topics were worth looking into and which ones were not. He assigned when people would come and say, I want to testify to the commission, I have something important to say. He would decide who would take that testimony, and so on. Let me give you an example, just one tiny example of how important that is. There's a new book out by Peter Lance called Cover Up. And Peter, good patriot that he is, went to testify because he had some important information about Ramzi Yousef. Remember who masterminded the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. He was also the mastermind of the Bojinka project that they discovered in Manila. And he also was the one who came up with the planes idea of using planes for weapons. So he is the mastermind. Peter went to give testimony. And his testimony was going to contradict some of the things that showed up that were in the prosecution's case in 1996 when they prosecuted Ramzi Yousef. Who took Peter Lance's testimony? Dietrich Schnell, one of the two prosecutors of that event, of that trial. So that is an example of how the executive director could skew. And Peter said he got a mole inside the commission, somebody who was very unhappy on the staff, who was unhappy with the way things were going. And they would meet, and he would tell Peter what was going on. And he said that Zelikow just runs the whole commission, that there are these leadership teams, and 6 out of the 7 teams, he said, are completely controlled by Zelikow. Only one team, run by John Farmer, was not, and they were butting heads all the time. There are other examples, like at the commission report, people would say, "Tell us about the war games." And they would ask the commissioners, "Why didn't you deal with the war games?" And the commissioners said, "Oh, we were told that was unimportant." Well, by whom were they told? So you essentially have the 9/11 Commission. It's the White House investigating itself. And furthermore, as Peter points out, the staff, you think, oh, they got a staff there. It's a bunch of people who know how to do research. They probably got, university students and so on. No. Ex-FBI, ex-CIA, ex-Department of Justice, 9 members from the Department of Justice. Ashcroft, So they've got their friends back on there. So when you wonder, why are no names named? Got people on there protecting their friends, protecting their institutions that they're still proud of, or they want to have the public to have a good point. So, from the very beginning, this was a doomed commission. It was not a commission to get the truth. Once you realize that, these things won't shock you quite as much. But even then, even knowing that, I was still shocked at the number of omissions and the audacity of some of the distortions. So let me go through some of these. Starting right out on the very first pages, they start telling you about the hijackers. What they don't tell you, and they give you the names, and in the middle of the book you can see their pictures. What they don't tell you is that at least six of those men are still alive. Some of them have, like Walid al-Shira, walked into the embassy and said, "Here I am, I'm not dead." Nevertheless, and some of them were interviewed by the BBC and London newspapers. And nevertheless, they're in there. And this Walid al-Shira, they have him on Flight 11, and they say, "We believe he's one of the ones who stabbed some of the people who were stabbed." Just a total disregard of well-known facts. Just omit that there's any problem with the identity of the hijackers. Likewise, they fail to mention, Daniel Hopsicker has written a whole book about Muhammad Atta, showing he was not a devout Muslim. The image we have, here are these radical fundamentalist Muslims, they're ready to meet their maker. Atta loved alcohol, pork, and prostitutes. And the commission says, we're puzzled. Why did these guys go to Las Vegas? We've not found any credible reason. Well, they loved lap dances, Another alleged hijacker is Hani Hanjour. And they tell us he was chosen to fly Flight 77, the one that was going to hit the Pentagon, because he was their best pilot. Hani Hanjour could not fly any kind of airplane. He would go up in his lessons, and the next time the guy wouldn't go up with him. He says, "You can't fly." He was known as a horrible pilot, even with a little plane. And yet he was alleged to fly this Boeing 757 and make this amazing spiral, come down and come in at ground level, 400 miles an hour into the Pentagon. The best pilots in the world, some of them have looked at that and said, "I don't think I could do that." Hani Hanjour could not fly. This one they do mention. It's a funny thing. They mention this and then they just ignore it. And they have President Bush amazed, boy, this was just some pilot, The flight manifest. We've never publicly seen flight manifests that show that any of the... So it's not just the 6. We don't know that any of the 19 men named were actually on these flights. None of this is mentioned. It's not mentioned and refuted. It's just not mentioned. So that's why I call it omissions. And some people call it the 9/11 Omission Commission.